You think an HOA is just a group of volunteers reminding you to mow your lawn? Think again. My name is Jack Morgan, former Navy SEAL, a single father, and once a victim of the most insidious form of unchecked power in America, the Homeowners Association. Those seemingly harmless neighborhood boards that, when left unregulated, don't just manage, they rule. The story you're about to hear isn't a novel. It's not an action movie. It's the truth. From the moment 3 strangers in tactical gear knocked on my door to check on my parenting, to the day I dismantled an entire covert control network hiding under the name Civic Order. This is a story about silence and its consequences, and more importantly, it's the story of a father who refused to bow to intimidation. My name is Jack Morgan, former Navy SEAL, and up until that morning I still believed the worst enemy I'd ever faced was in Kandahar. I was wrong. Worse than the Taliban? A fake HOA dressed up in tactical cosplay, armed with discount gear and a deranged belief that they had the right to lay hands on my child. It started on a peaceful Saturday, early morning. I had just brewed my first cup of coffee, made by hand, the military way. No sugar, no cream, black as the ocean at midnight. Jason, my son, was still asleep. I stepped out onto the porch, looking past the old oak trees shedding leaves with the season. Quiet, exactly why I moved out of the city. Wide land, distant neighbors, no HOA, no weed control notices, no, your garbage can is 2 inches off. Regulation, nonsense. I chose this place so my son could grow up without stepping on the cracks of city life. We had built something solid, away from trouble. At least, that's what I thought. 3 heavy knocks. Not the I brought cookies kind of knock. Not the you've got a package to sign kind either. It was the knock soldiers know too well. 3 a.m. raid kind. My gut clenched. The coffee rippled in my cup. I glanced through the peephole. 3 men. No police uniforms, no official insignia. Dressed in black, cheap tactical vests. Earpieces sloppily hanging like they'd just watched a knockoff FBI training video on YouTube. Their faces were stiff, smug, but not cold enough to be men who had actually faced death. I opened the door, slowly. My body naturally fell into a defensive stance. Once trained, always trained. The lead guy was tall, buzz-cut, wearing wraparound shades like he was starring in a low-budget action flick. He glanced down at the clipboard in his hand with all the seriousness of someone holding nuclear launch. Codes. Mr. Morgan? His voice was smooth, cold, the kind of guy who practiced in the mirror. That's me, I said, hand still gripping the door, legs planted firm. We're with the HOA Child Welfare Compliance Committee. There's been a report concerning minor subject number 417, your son. I didn't get angry. I didn't panic. I simply stepped fully outside and closed the door behind me, blocking their view into the house. That's instinct. Never let the enemy see your weak points. I locked eyes with him. There's no HOA in this area, I said, and even if there was, they don't have any jurisdiction over my son. The 2 standing behind him looked like nightclub bouncers on discount night. One short and heavy, arms crossed like he was about to intimidate someone. The other, tall and skinny, scanning the area nervously, unsteady, untrained. The lead man didn't blink. We have authority to detain minors in cases of behavioral violations, per Article 12.3 of the Community Conduct Code. I almost laughed. He was quoting laws he made up himself. Whose community conduct code? I asked. This land isn't under any HOA. I verified that before I bought it. He didn't respond right away. Instead, his eyes flicked past me, toward the hallway behind my shoulder, where Jason's room was. The look in his eyes wasn't concerning. It was controlled. That sick glint of power he thought he had. That was when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a threat. In the next second, I set my coffee down on the ground, stood tall, every muscle coiled like a wire. Not from fear, but calculation. My brain already scanning for range, weakness, and strike order if things went physical. My right hand hovered near my waist, inches from the gear pouch mounted behind the door. "I'm giving you exactly 5 seconds to get off my property," I said, voice low and steady, like thunder before a storm. "After that, I'm treating this as attempted abduction." The young guy started to step back. The lead guy smirked. The kind of smirk that might work on suburban moms. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I smirked, too. But mine was the kind a hunter gives when the prey thinks it's a predator. I've seen that look before. The look of a man who thinks he's in control. The sunglasses guy stood there, still clutching his clipboard like I was supposed to sign over custody of my own child. What he didn't know was that he had just awakened the most dangerous part of me, the part that never lets another man lay a finger on his blood. "I won't say it again," I repeated, eyes locked. "You're trespassing. This is private property, and any action taken toward my son will be considered a threat to his life." The fat guy on the right took half a step forward, chin lifted in challenge. "Calm down, Mr. Morgan. This is just an administrative check. If you cooperate, nothing bad needs to happen." I squinted. He said, "Cooperate," like I was being audited by the IRS. But the way he glanced at Jason's window, that wasn't administrative. That was predatory. Said nothing. Just subtly shifted left, placing myself directly between them and the house. I'd done this before, in Fallujah, in Somalia, in places where one wrong move could cost the whole squad. They didn't know me. They thought they were intimidating a single dad with tall grass. But I've picked up teammates in pieces. I know the scent of danger, and I know when to strike. The youngest one, tall, lanky, still baby-faced, started to back up. His left foot slid on the concrete, just enough to make a soft scuff. But to me, it was like a siren. He was panicking. And in a setup like this, a panicked man is a fuse. "I don't see any badges," I said, eyes shifting to him. "No IDs, no official documentation. I have security cams above us recording everything. Who are you? What agency are you with?" The sunglasses guy stayed quiet but smirked. "We're a support unit from the Ridgefield Extended District HOA. Special Volunteer Delegation. Community safety is everyone's responsibility." I chuckled. "Ridgefield HOA is 7 miles from here, and this property isn't within any jurisdiction. I checked with the land office before I bought it. Whatever you're running, it's a bad act." The fat guy stepped forward fully now, trying to flex his arms beneath that knockoff tactical vest. "We have the right to evaluate living conditions if complaints are made. There have been reports that your son frequently screams at night. Sounds like child neglect." I froze. "What did you just say?" I asked, voice dropping low, each syllable carrying thunder. "Your boy, Jason, right? Seems like he's not receiving proper care. If you don't let us inspect the premises, we'll escalate this to Child Protective Services immediately." My fists clenched, but I stayed calm. Breathe. Deep. Emotion doesn't control me. Skill does. "You have cameras? Audio recordings? Any verified witness?" I asked, my tone low and steady but sharp as a blade. No response. I nodded. "Then, hear this. If you take one more step toward that door, I will interpret your actions as attempted forced entry with intent to harm a minor. I have the right to defend, and I will exercise it." The tall one stood frozen. He was calculating. He thought the 3 of them could overpower me. Maybe, if I were a hunched-over carpenter living on food stamps. But I've survived 6 tours, 2 ambushes, and I still drive my son to school every morning. The air thickened. Even the sparrow on the roof stopped singing. Only heartbeats remained, mine, theirs, and the truth that if anyone made a move, blood would be spilled. The young guy's hand started to shake. He backed up another half step. The fat one held his glare but didn't advance. Only the Sunglasses guy remained still until he smirked. "We'll be back," he said. "Next time, maybe with someone who does have authority." I didn't respond, just watched them retreat, all three turning and heading for a black SUV parked a few meters down the road, no license plate, fully tinted windows. I snapped a photo, logged everything, memorized every detail. When the door shut behind me, I didn't sit down, didn't sip my coffee. I went straight to Jason's room. He was still asleep, peacefully, the way every child should be. I closed the curtain, pulled the hard drive from the security cams, and called an old friend, still on the force with the Rockwell County Sheriff's Department. "What's going on, Jack?" he asked. I only said one sentence. "Someone just tried to come for my boy. I want every HOA record from this area, fast." The scariest thing in this world isn't the sound of a gunshot. It's the silence after someone threatens your child, then vanishes like they never existed. The three self-proclaimed HOA enforcers disappeared in the dust trail of their unmarked SUV. No clear evidence, no legal justification. But I knew this wouldn't be the last time. I locked the door, bolted all three locks. My home, once a peaceful refuge after years on the battlefield, now felt small, crowded with the weight of being watched. I walked to Jason's room. He was still asleep, clutching his worn-out teddy bear, chest rising and falling with the peace. Only children are allowed. I sat on the edge of the bed, placed my hand on his forehead. Cool, no fever, safe. But in my mind, everything was boiling, like combat lines being drawn. I've planted mines, painted targets for airstrikes, escaped homes rigged to blow, but I'd never felt the cold dread I felt now. Not until a hidden force dared to reach inside my home. Toward my son. I stood. First thing, check the cameras. Thankfully, my security system wasn't cheap. I backed up the footage onto 3 drives. One went into a safe, one I emailed to a secure encrypted address. The third I took with me as I drove to meet the only man I trusted right now, Rick Baldwin, an old teammate from our unit, now working as a county-level investigator. "Jesus, Jack," Rick growled after watching the footage. "These guys aren't real HOA. Their stance, the way they speak, their posture, matches the fake civil enforcement groups we tracked last year out east." "They knew Jason's name," I said, eyes locked on the screen. "Knew the address, knew which room he sleeps in." Rick exhaled. "This might not be your usual fake HOA. Could be a privatized enforcement group. They use the appearance of community authority to push personal agendas. They get hired, and if someone pays enough, they'll show up at anyone's doorstep." I looked at him. "Who has a motive?" Rick didn't answer, but I already had a name in my head. Linda Carver. She lived 2 houses down, single, nosy. The type who'd report your tree for leaning half an inch over the property line. She once knocked on my door at 9 p.m. just to remind me that Jason was playing too loudly in the yard on a Saturday. Linda didn't have power, but Linda knew someone with fake power. And more than anything, Linda resented freedom. Not mine, but the idea of it. The fact that I lived without permission. That a boy could be raised with real love, not a checklist of bylaws. That night, I didn't sleep. I monitored every camera angle, rechecked every blind spot around the house, even installed extra motion sensors at the back door and along the eaves. I didn't survive war because I was the best shot. I survived because I was always prepared. Around 2 a.m., a faint sound hit the front gate. Not footsteps. Something light making contact with metal. I stepped out onto the porch, pistol in hand. A piece of paper. No envelope. No letterhead. Just a single sheet with a typed line. "You've been warned. Next time there won't be." A knock. I flipped on the porch lights. Nothing. But I knew they were out there. Watching. Waiting for a mistake. The next morning I drove Jason to school like normal. But I took a different car. The old one had been bugged. I knew because I found the tracker under the rear bumper during my full sweep the night before. I said nothing to Jason. He was just a kid. He deserved to believe the world was still safe. But I didn't believe it anymore. I began digging. Not on Google, in the system Rick gave me temporary access to. Records on Ridgefield HOA. And beyond that, records of pseudo-civil groups. Unofficial enforcement teams, community security funded by neighborhood contributions. One name stood out: Civic Order Initiative, a self-styled security network operating in over 12 states. No federal registration, not under police oversight, but with enough gear, manpower, and backdoor connections to make a single father bend. The file, a photo from last year, 3 men dressed in black standing outside another home in Idaho. The same 3 men. I shut the screen, stood up. There was no room left for doubt. They didn't just want Jason. They wanted what I represented. A father who doesn't comply, who won't kneel to fake community rules designed to control every breath you take. But they chose the wrong. Man, I've fought for this freedom before, and I'm ready to do it again. There's one principle I learned in the military. When the enemy doesn't know they're being watched, that's when you gain control. I wasn't waiting anymore. No more defense, no more hoping this would just blow over like a bad wind. I had seen the faces of the 3 men who dared to step onto my property, say my son's name, and issue threats as if they had the authority of a military court. The problem was, they had no authority at all, but they acted like someone had their back, and I was going to find out who. Rick agreed to help, unofficially. He looped me into a quiet investigation team at the county level, focused on tracking down fake civic organizations. I wasn't surprised to see that the Civic Order Initiative had a file thick as a field manual, and I wasn't surprised when I saw one familiar name listed under local sponsors, Linda Carver. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor, she was funding the group. In the system, Linda was listed as a county-level collaborator, which meant she could request inspections, trigger interventions, or submit behavior reports. Reports like sustained nighttime screaming from minor after 9 p.m., single adult displays antisocial behavior, refuses HOA meetings, potential non-compliant homeschooling risk. I felt a lump in my throat when I read that last part. She reported me because I homeschooled my son, something I did to keep Jason safe, to let him grow in his own way, not get shoved into a broken public system I no longer trusted. Linda didn't care about Jason. She cared about control. I drove to the Civic Order office, located in a crumbling commercial strip on the west side of the county. A concrete building, no signage, no receptionist. Just a single camera angled above the door and a small button like a guard station buzzer. I didn't ring it. I brought with me a hard drive containing the footage. The 3 men, tactical posture, threatening behavior, no badges. I pushed, opened the door after checking the lock. Electronic deadbolt, busted. Apparently, this civil organization wasn't used to uninvited guests. Inside were just 2 rooms. One had computers, the other, a desk and a bulletin board plastered with photos of residential homes. One of them was my house, taken from above, a drone shot. Underneath the photo, a paper was clipped, hastily scribbled, "Morgan, reevaluate." Tier 2 target? I took that note, slipped it into my pocket, walked into the server room. Hard drives lined the side of the rack, all numbered. I plugged in my USB and downloaded the last 7 days of data logs. Security system? A joke. I've cracked tougher encryptions in mud huts under artillery fire. 12 minutes later, I had the full operational log of their local enforcement team, including a list of homes flagged as targets. Internal Zoom meeting recordings, emails, one of which, signed LC, sent to the 3 enforcers. Morgan is a control-resistant subject. Apply pressure. If he doesn't comply, proceed with secondary handling. I left before their alarm system even noticed me. When I got home, I wasn't angry. I was focused. There's a truth I learned after all those years in special operations. The more something tries to hide, the more it needs to be revealed. Linda wasn't just a control freak. She was a cog in something bigger. People pretending to protect the community in order to erode personal freedoms, slowly, one household at a time. And I wasn't letting them do that to Jason. That night, I took Jason to stay with his aunt in the next town over. No HOA, no civic initiative, just real people, living real lives. Once he was safe, I made some calls. One to Rick, requesting full transfer of evidence to federal authorities, one to a lawyer, prepping a case for impersonating law enforcement, endangering a minor, and invasion of privacy, and one to Linda Carver herself. Her voice trembled when I spoke. You want to teach me how to live? Fine, but now I'll teach you something. Never threaten the child of a man who survived where the only law was survival. She stammered. I hung up. No apology needed. I wasn't after apologies. I was after justice. The most dangerous battlefield isn't one with bullets. It's the one with no name, no uniforms, and no gunfire. Just lies, spreading faster than gunpowder. 3 days after infiltrating the Civic Order office, everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. Jason was still safe at his aunt's house. I kept scanning the data, passed all the evidence to Rick. My lawyer, Ms. Harrington, a 60-something woman with eyes like X-rays, had already filed charges against Linda and the Civic. Order with the county court, then, Rick called. 6 a.m. His voice was heavy. Jack, big trouble. The local press picked you up, and it's bad. I opened my laptop, and there it was, on the front page of the Ridgefield Times. Former SEAL loses control. Neighbors allege violence, threats, and unsafe environment for child. The article reeked of spin. Quoting an anonymous HOA source, it accused me of yelling at night, confining a child indoors without explanation, and threatening neighbors with weapons. It even quoted a neighbor named Linda C. Yeah, not even trying to hide it. We were just trying to help. But he was aggressive. This community needs to feel safe. I scoffed. Safe? No one wears tactical gear and wraparound sunglasses to help. From there, things slid downhill like oil on concrete. A cop, clearly tipped off by Linda, knocked on my door with a warrant for child welfare check, even though Jason wasn't there. A group of strangers, clearly from Civic Order, began hovering around the property, setting up small cameras, and even posted a community alert on my gate. Non-compliant behavior, subject to urgent monitoring. 2 neighbors, polite before, now avoided me completely. Linda wasn't just weaponizing the law, she was attacking my reputation, attacking the way people saw me. I was prepared for bullets. I wasn't prepared for a media war. Ms. Harrington said, Jack, this is classic. Discredit you first. If they win public opinion, the court won't see a father defending his home. They'll see an unstable man. We need to hit back. I nodded. This wasn't just my fight anymore. How many parents had been cornered like this, without skills, without proof, without backup? I couldn't stay silent. I contacted an old friend, Toby Frazier, a former war correspondent, now running an independent news channel. I sent him everything. The footage of the fake HOA enforcers, photos of the Civic Order office, emails from Linda, and the picture of the Tier 2 target note. 3 days later, the video hit YouTube. The title, HOA or Mafia? The story of Jack Morgan, a father attacked for saying no. The internet exploded. Thousands of comments, shared across Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, and they didn't just defend me. They attacked the HOA system itself, a system with unchecked power that governed people's lives more intimately than the government ever could. I thought I had flipped the board. But Civic Order didn't play by the rules. One night I received an anonymous email. No subject, no signature, just a clip. Jason playing basketball at his aunt's house, shot from a distance, zoomed in on his face. Underneath, we know where the boy is. I'd never felt my blood freeze like that. This wasn't a threat anymore. This was war. I called Rick, not for advice, to declare intent. I'm going on offense. If they want to twist the truth, I'll show the whole country who civic order really is. Rick hesitated. Jack, if you do this, you'll be stepping outside the law. Be careful, I answered, voice cold as steel. I've stepped outside the law before, to protect those I love. This is no different. I called Toby again, told him to prepare a second video. But this time, it wouldn't just be my story. This time, we'd include internal documents from Civic Order, photos of high-tier target maps, testimonies from other victims who had been coerced into HOA compliance, and footage of the Civic Order SUV parked at Linda Carver's house at 4 a.m. The truth doesn't always speak up, but when it does, it screams. I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. I was rewriting them, line by line, word by word, with my own blood, sweat, and honor. The Counter-Strike video went live at 8 p.m. on Thursday. Toby Frazier opened the video with no dramatic effects. Just a photo of me and a single line of text. When the people next door become your surveillance, who protects you? Then the footage rolled, section by section. Section 1. Footage from my security cam. 3 men in tactical gear demanding compliance with HOA detainment protocol. Section 2. Internal emails from Linda Carver instructing her team to put pressure on Morgan and escalate intervention for minors in unregulated homes. Section 3. Civic Order's target list, including 17 families, mostly single parents or those who refused public schooling. Section 4. Surveillance footage of Civic Order's SUV leaving Linda's home at dawn, linked to the threatening video of Jason filmed from afar. There wasn't much narration. Toby let the evidence speak, and the audience listened, loud and clear. The video ended with a quote from me. If I don't speak up, Jason will grow up afraid, the same way I once lived in the dark. I'm not fighting for myself, I'm fighting for the truth to exist. In less than 12 hours, everything exploded. 100,000 views, 50,000 comments. A Reddit group named HOA Nightmares began compiling files on Civic Order nationwide. An anonymous former HOA staffer messaged Toby, I worked inside the system, I'm ready to go public. And most importantly, CBS called, inviting me to a live interview on their Sunday morning program. I never thought I'd appear on national TV without wearing a uniform. But now I understood. This was a different kind of battle, and I was wearing the armor of truth. That evening, Linda was forced to hold an emergency HOA meeting. I showed up, no invitation, no permission. The meeting room was packed, folded chairs, flickering fluorescent lights. Faces that once looked away, now looked up, directly at me. They had seen the video. Linda stepped up to the podium, trying to smile, but her voice trembled. We need to clarify some of the misinformation being spread online. I stepped forward. No mic. I didn't need one. It's not misinformation, Linda. It's exposure. You built a covert control system hiding behind the HOA name to monitor, threaten, and manipulate this community. Civic Order is just an oppression machine with a fresh coat of community welfare paint. And I have proof to back up every word. No one stopped me. No one dared. The next day, federal authorities issued an official statement. Civic Order Initiative is under investigation for impersonating public agencies, violating privacy rights, and illegally using resident data. Linda was detained for questioning. Civic Order's office was sealed off. Core members were added to federal watch lists, and most importantly, I was cleared of all accusations. No findings of endangerment or misconduct as a parent. My honor was restored. The truth was upheld. Jason came home. He didn't say much, just hugged me tight and asked, Dad, Do you have to fight anymore? I knelt down, looked him in the eye, and answered, No, son, I don't need to fight anymore. Because now, the world is fighting with me, but I know there are more out there. More Lindas, more civic orders, more HOAs masquerading as law to control people's lives, and I know one thing for certain, if I stay silent, they'll rise again. So I don't rest. I started writing a book. I began speaking at public events. I kept producing videos, telling the stories of families who were threatened, watched, and deceived into believing for the community meant giving up their freedom. I'm not just a former SEAL anymore. I'm a father who stood up and will never bow again. I thought that when Linda was arrested, civic order dismantled, and my name cleared, everything would be over. I was wrong. This story didn't end. It had only just begun. 3 days after Linda's first court hearing, I received an email. No subject, no greeting, just one line. I've been a victim of an HOA since 2012. They forced me to move. Attached was a zip file, 47 internal documents from another organization called Neighborhood Integrity Corps, property codes, surveillance, records, handwritten behavioral incident reports, all sent back to Civic Order's old headquarters. In other words, Civic Order was just one head, one of many. I started getting letters, texts, voicemails from all over the country. A mother in Texas fined $500 by her HOA because her son played basketball after 7 p.m. A father in Oregon forced to change his child's school because of non-compliance with community standards. A veteran in Florida, his house broke after he refused to install the HOA's shared camera system. All of them shared one thing. Their HOAs were not just community volunteer groups. They were funded, structured, goal-driven organizations with power that exceeded legal boundaries. I launched my first podcast, Beyond the Fence. The opening episode was titled, It Starts with the Lawn, Ends with a Court Cell. The channel grew faster than I expected, not because of who I was, but because they'd been waiting far too long to be heard. In episode 3, I invited a special guest, Mr. Fred Langston, 72, a retired teacher who once sued his HOA in North Carolina after they tried to force him out for not fitting the community culture. Fred sat in front of the camera, eyes wet with emotion, and said, We used to think of HOAs as caretakers, order keepers. But now I see, when unchecked, any mechanism can become a tool of oppression. I lost my house. But thanks to you, I got my voice back. In that moment, I understood. I was no longer just Jack Morgan, Jason's father. I had become the voice for thousands of people whose freedom was stolen without a single bullet fired. I accepted an invitation to speak at a civic conference in Sacramento. The topic, HOAs, the hidden laws of the unelected. I stood before 400 people. Many were older than me, silver-haired, hands trembling, but their eyes were on fire. I told Jason's story, the 3 men in body armor, Linda, the target map. No slides, no graphics, just righteous anger. At the end of the speech, I didn't hear applause. I heard old people crying. A few weeks later, Lawyer Harrington called me. Jack, there's a group of legislators who want to meet. They're considering drafting a federal bill to regulate HOA power. A year ago, I was a single dad just trying to live in peace. Now I was helping write laws to put limits on those who once trampled my freedom. The civic order was officially dissolved. Linda was sentenced to 8 years in prison for impersonating a public official and violating privacy rights. But what gave me the most peace wasn't the verdict. It was this. Jason no longer had to live in a neighborhood full of spy eyes and obedient ears. Now, our backyard echoes with real laughter. No more fear. But the war isn't over. I know there are still HOAs under different names with different tactics, waiting for their chance. I've realized silence is what feeds them, so I don't stay silent. I won't stop. I travel across states. I speak. I fight. I collect evidence. I share knowledge. Sometimes Jason asks, "Dad, are you tired?" I ruffle his hair, smile. Yeah, but it's the kind of tiredness that matters, not like the tiredness that comes from silence. I no longer stand alone. Behind me are thousands, people who once bowed before HOA gates, now standing tall, fists clenched, reclaiming their right to be free. And I know, ahead there will be more battles. But this time, we carry the strongest weapon, the truth. The day I knew I had won wasn't the day Linda was sentenced, or when civic order collapsed. It was the day I stepped onto my porch and saw Jason reassembling the old basketball hoop. No asking for permission, no looking over his shoulder. He played, free, unafraid of anyone knocking on our door. People sometimes ask me, "Jack, after everything you've been through, if you could go back to that day, when the 3 armored men came to your house, would you choose to avoid it?" I don't need to think. I just say, no. I only wish I had stood up sooner. HOA, 3 letters that seem harmless, is the sweetest trap in modern America. A system designed to manage, preserve, and care for communities. But without oversight, it becomes something else. A disguised mechanism of control. I wasn't fighting against the community. I was fighting against the disguise of authority. When a group is given the power to maintain order without being held accountable, they don't preserve, they control. They don't ask, "What do you need?" They ask, "Did you do exactly as I say?" Jason once asked me, "Dad, why do grown-ups stay quiet when they see something wrong?" That question still chills me, because for most of my life, I did the same. I stayed quiet. I used to think silence kept the peace, that it helped things blow over. But the truth is, every time we stay silent in the face of wrong, we help it grow. I'm leaving Jason more than a house. I'm leaving him a lesson. Never be afraid when truth is on your side. And if someone calls you a troublemaker just for standing up for what's right, remember this. Good people aren't always obedient. Good people sometimes have to break bad order. Today, I'm still moving. I lecture at law schools about civil rights. I speak to community groups about identifying abuse of power. I get letters every week from people who once endured in silence, now stepping forward. I see a movement forming. An America that no longer obeys blindly, not fooled by handbooks or sugar-coated HOA meetings, but an America that asks questions, doubts power, and stands upright. And if you, the person reading this, live somewhere you're afraid to let your kid play outside after 7 p.m., afraid to hang a flag on your porch, afraid to speak up against a committee because you fear a fine, ask yourself, am I living in a neighborhood or a prison without walls? And if the answer gives you chills, do what I did. Open the door. Step outside. Don't be afraid. Because once you start speaking up, you'll find you are not alone. I, Jack Morgan, a father, a soldier, a citizen, and I will never bow again to disguised authority. I didn't tell this story for praise. I told it as a warning, because if they could come to my house and try to take my son, they can come to yours. Freedom doesn't come quietly. It doesn't live in rule books or HOA meetings with cupcakes and crowd-pleasing slogans. It lives when one ordinary person stands up and says, "Enough, I'm Jack Morgan." And if this story stirred something inside you, share it. Speak up. Start with your own front yard. Because you're not just protecting grass, you're protecting the future.